weather conditions that day than any other warship present, was methodically hunted down and brutally dispatched. Scharnhorst and her sister ship Gneisenau, Salmon and Gluckstein, as they were sometimes popularly called, were two of the most famous ships of the Second World War on either side. They were built after the lifting of the limitations imposed on the German Navy by the Treaty of Versailles and were originally intended for a war in which France was envisaged as Germany's only opponent. These two ships were designed to intercept and destroy the convoys bringing troop reinforcements back to France from West Africa. Scharnhorst was laid down at the Marinewerft, Wilhelmshaven, on the 16th of May 1935, launched on the 3rd of October 1936, and commissioned under her first commanding officer, Captain zur See Otto Ziliax, on the 7th of January 1939. She displaced 38,900 tons full load, of which some 12,500 tons was Krupp armor, in places nearly 14 inches thick. She had 9 28-centimeter, 10.92-inch guns in 3 dual turrets, 12 15-centimeter, 5.85-inch guns, 14 10.5-centimeter, 4.095-inch guns, and numerous 37mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns, with 6 53.3-centimeter, 20.8-inch torpedo tubes in 2 triple mountings. She carried 4 aircraft. Her 3 shafts gave her a top speed of 32 knots, and she had an operational range of some 10,000 miles at 17 knots. She was 770.5 feet long, 98.4 feet in the beam, and drew nearly 30 feet at full draft. The Germans called her a battleship. The Allies termed her a battle cruiser. With her bows fully lengthened and flared, she was one of the most beautiful naval ships ever built. Scharnhorst and her partner in crime, as the British public thought of Gneisenau, were both in the headlines from the earliest days of the war. On their first war cruiser in November 1939, it was Scharnhorst who sank the hopelessly outmatched armed merchant cruiser Rawalpindi on the Northern Patrol south of Iceland. This was an episode which Scharnhorst's crew, who had already begun to think of themselves as an elite, did not consider as redounding to their credit. One of Scharnhorst's survivors said, "It left an unpleasant taste in my mouth." In April, off Norway, they were both in action again against the battlecruiser Renown, and later in June they sank the aircraft carrier Glorious and both her 2 escorting destroyers, Ardent and Acasta. In January 1941, their teamwork reached its peak when they sailed on an extended raid on Commerce. By the time they returned in March, 2 months later, they had brilliantly carried out their main purpose as raiders, having sunk or captured 22 ships of 115,622 tons and totally disrupted Allied convoy schedules for some time and over a very wide area. They had also tempered valor with discretion, having adroitly withdrawn on 3 occasions when they sighted an opposing capital ship with a convoy. But this cruise was the summit of their achievements. At Brest, when they reached harbour on the 23rd of March 1941, both ships were subjected to harassing air attacks. In February 1942, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, with the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen, who had joined them after her own cruise with Bismarck, with an escort of destroyers, made their celebrated Channel Dash and returned home to Germany in a boldly conceived and skillfully executed operation which greatly alarmed the people of Great Britain that heavy enemy ships could pass so close to their coastline. Certainly the German squadron had wiped the Allies' eyes in passing through the Dover Straits almost unscathed, but the ships were far less dangerous to the Atlantic convoys in Germany than they had been at Brest. The Channel Dash was their last joint sortie. For Gneisenau, the war was over. She had always seemed the unluckier partner. The crew of Scharnhorst actually called her their poor relation. She was damaged by Renown's gunfire in April 1940, torpedoed by the submarine Clyde off Trondheim in June, hit by a torpedo dropped from a Beaufort of 217 Squadron RAF in Brest in April 1941, for which exploit the pilot Flight Lieutenant K. Campbell RAF VR received a posthumous Victoria Cross, hit by 4 bombs in dock 4 days later, and mined during the passage back to Germany. In Kiel, later in February 1942, Gneisenau was bombed again and damaged so badly that almost her entire bow was blown off. Afterwards, she burned for 3 days, and 180 mangled corpses were removed from her shattered forward compartments. She was moved to Gdynia in April and paid off in July. From